We're all here tonight to hear about the underwater world of Lake Superior. Wally Peterson is here. He's from Thunder Country Diving in Thunder Bay, Ontario, where he's owned and operated it for 45 years, providing scuba diving lessons, charters, and fun events for all levels of divers. Part of what he's going to talk about tonight is some of the things that you find underwater in Lake Superior, including shipwrecks. And he's going to tell us all about some of the kinds of opportunities that you have scuba diving or even some of the shipwrecks that you can see close to the surface. So Wally's pretty passionate about scuba diving, and he contributes to local tourism in Thunder Bay through the Lakehead Transportation Museum Society, and also likes to bring history to life on the shorelines of Thunder Bay. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Wally. Take it away.
Oh, thank you, Fran. It's going to be interesting how we work through this, because this presentation we're talking about the world underwater at Lake Superior, but a lot of you people haven't been up here in the Thunder Bay area. And I've got Michelle, who works for me beside, and she's young and has she rock climbs, she ice climbs, she hikes, she kayaks. She knows where most of the waterfalls and where all the train tunnels are in the area, so we can delve a little bit into that. And with her kayaking this year, she found one of the news sites that were, I'll show you some of the photos of it. And I'm dealing with the landowner there right now on another project that's sort of off to the side. When they talk about the Lakehead Transportation Museum Society, we've got one of the old Canadian government icebreakers that we brought back to town that was built here as a museum boat. So I'm working on displays in that constantly. And I'm down off the shore where we have some of the wrecks that we dive is a tug that was built here that's going to get scrapped. So I'm getting artifacts off of that right now to put into the museum. So we're going to deal with Lake Superior. We'll deal with wrecks and whatever you guys have of interest for if you come up here. My store was established in 1971 is when the company was incorporated. It originally started as a guy in his house in 1962. So the company's been around for a long time. We've been running courses and doing diving up here. I started here in 1976. I moved here from the flatland of Manitoba and came in and started working the store and teaching. And so I've been doing a little bit over the last few years, I guess you could say. Of course, I'm trying to keep the underwater heritage there, because divers are kind of like pirates. If they see something and they think it's valuable and nobody notices, it gets pocketed and disappears. We also do a kids program. From 8 years old, we'll be taking kids in the pool, showing them how to do scuba diving. And then 10 years old, we can certify them, and we take them out snorkeling on some of the shallow wrecks, and we even take them diving on one of the small wrecks that I'll talk about shortly. Okay. Diving is a great sport. It's kind of like you guys out kayaking, where if there's nobody around, when you're underwater, you only have you and your thoughts that you deal with, and you can just get into your own thoughts, relax, and do things. It's a sport that is normally done with a partner, and so you work with the diving community. People with various interests, can be of any age and activities, and it's a local and global activity, because when travel's fully open, people go all over the world and dive. Basically anywhere where the water's not solid, you can go diving. And up here, even when it's solid, we can use a chainsaw and we can still go diving because it's liquid underneath. So we do that. We also try and teach people to appreciate the marine life that's around in the area. I mean, you have, of course, the exotics that everybody knows about, but there are freshwater shrimp in Lake Superior. There are freshwater anemones. There's freshwater sponges. So in the marine life around here, there are different things to see. And Michelle has taken a number of courses, because that's sort of her field of study. from university. She holds a master's degree. So she's a pretty educated young lady.
If I can add to that, we have a Thunder Country Scuba Club, which is kind of similar to the Rovers, where we schedule different events and let people know what's up and what's going on and what's exciting. So if you're at all interested, you're welcome to join the club and see what we're kind of getting up to every week.
Okay. When we're talking about shipwrecks, not all the ships laying on the bottom of Lake Superior would be classed as shipwrecks, because a shipwreck is an event where a ship goes up on the rocks and is destroyed unintentionally. There are a lot of old ships in this area that were scuttlings, and those were taken out to clean out the harbor in the 1900 and 1930s to get rid of derelicts. And now, of course, there's artificial reef programs all over the world where they're taking ships that are abandoned and cleaning them up environmentally and then putting them down. And Florida's been really big on that, to take the pressure off the natural reefs, because divers, if they don't have good buoyancy control and they crawl along the reef, kind of destroy and damage things. So shipwrecks are being used for that in a lot of areas. Here we have a lot of historic shipwrecks that are there. My screen's kind of covering some of the pictures that are there, but in the lake, of course, Isle Royale is 35 miles away from us. We can't go there with charters and stuff because it's American and we can't go work in the States. But out of Grand Portage, they run, of course, ferries that run out to Isle Royale. And there's a number of wrecks there. The America is in Washington Harbor, and it's about three foot down to 82 feet. And so you can paddle over top of it and see it. The one picture that's at the top of the screen there is the George M. Cox, which originally was the Puritan, which was a troop ship during World War I. It was being converted into a passenger ship to bring people to the Chicago World's Fair. It was going past Isle Royale in the fog, and they ran it up on Rock of Ages Reef. And you can see by the picture, she was launched into the air and sat there until the storm took it off. And she's now in water from 5 feet down to 120 foot in the cold lake. And to get rid of the feeling of how cold the lake is, this year the lake warmed up even in the open lake down to 60 foot. It was 60 degrees Fahrenheit. On Sunday, I was in the lake and it was 55 degrees. So our lake is still relatively warm compared to what most people think, that Lake Superior is about 38 degrees all the time. So we have a number of wrecks that get warm and quite comfortable. The scuttling of the old ships, there's a number of them that we have that are spread out just offshore at the Welcome Islands. There's a graveyard of ships that's in deep, deep water that we don't take people to. And there's even a Civil War blockade runner that's on the bottom there. So there's a lot of things kicking around the areas that are here. I've dove down into the States as far as the Madeira, which is off Split Rock Lighthouse. And it's an interesting wreck. There's wrecks coming up the shore. The Ely is under the Silver Bay breakwall part of it. Up Knife River, there's a lot of wrecks. So there's a lot of things to dive, and that gives you habitat for fish and vertebrates. Zebra mussels are slowly getting up into the area. I saw some this weekend, but they're not as invasive as they are in warmer climates, if you would. The picture on the screen there is the wreck of the Robert Fryer. She was built in 1888 in Bay City, Wisconsin. It was used to transport, of course, grain and other products from here and around the lakes. It sticks out of the water and goes down to 35 foot. So the boilers are sitting in it. You can paddle over top of it and see it. It's good for snorkeling. There's fish all over it. And of course, there's the boilers that you can see that are there. The boilers are about 8 foot in diameter. So they're not small little things. In 1930, it was retired from service, and it was taken out to the Welcome Islands, which again are 5 miles offshore. It was anchored out there. One of the tourist kind of companies around here that did harbor cruises and things at the time had it out there. They took people out, charged them a quarter, and they set the ship on fire as a spectacle for them to watch. The hawser holding it to its anchor burned through. The wind was coming from the west, so it blew against the island right there and set the whole island on fire. So for 25 cents, they got a pretty good show. And so we take people there and we dive that wreck as an example. The Green River was also built in the United States. It was originally called the Gogebic, and it was reduced to a barge in 1921 after it had been salvaged from a shoal just south of Thunder Bay. The Gogebic wrecked on the shoal, was a complete total loss, and it was strucken from the shipping rolls. A couple of us spent an entire summer diving on that reef looking for it. And then coming off the Robert Fryer one day, the sounder picked up an anomaly on the bottom. The guys went down, discovered the barge, found out the barge was the Green River, and it had been the salvaged Gogebic. So now I'm diving on that wreck. The wreck itself has intact decks, and we can swim in and out of the 3 of the holds. The deck of it sits at 42 feet. The rudder is standing proud off the stern, sticking up from the bottom. And a lot of the divers that have come up and dove it really like these 2 wrecks. And because they can go in and out, and there's a lot of stuff to see on them. You can see lake trout and stuff in the wrecks, and so fish hang around them. So one of the hazards of diving these things happens to be fishing lines, downrigger lines, because people fish over them and they snag up all the time. The gray oak is a schooner scow, and I used to know when she was built, and I can't remember. Maximum depth is about 115 foot. It was scuttled in 1911, east of the Welcome Islands, where we go diving. On the stern, it was easy to identify because it had gray oak of BU for Buffalo, which was his last port of registry. Gray oak is spelled 2 ways. It's spelled Gray, and the A is over an E. So originally it was spelled Grey, oak. The ship's wheel, last time we were out there, was still attached to the steering gear at about 75 foot down. And it's quite rare to have a wheel that has stayed and survived for the period of time it has, because for some reason, people feel that once they get on a wreck that's well known, something like that belongs in their basement. So we've been trying to maintain and preserve that. Our biggest thing right now is we're somewhat of a seaport. We have a lot of boats coming in and out. The cabins used to be upright on it, and we can see where an anchor was dragged through the cabins. Fortunately, it didn't take the wheel out, so we're trying to get a buoy on it. And it's in a no anchor zone, but that means little to some people. Okay, the Gordon Goche is a wreck that lies off of Silver Harbor Conservation Area. Depth of 40 to 130 feet is kind of wrong. Michelle kind of blew the note on that. Depth of water is 4 feet to about 30 feet. And on October 8th, it was towing the barges to Thunder Bay that were bringing in all the rock that was going to be used to build the break wall. and it was on the shore, burnt, and in about 1974, a number of divers decided that they really liked the propeller that was on the wreck. They decided the best way to get it off was with this stuff called dynamite, and they put dynamite underneath the hull of the ship and blew everything up. And the propeller, they then came by the store and said, look what we did. And the store owner at the time said, what are you going to do with it? Well, we'll get $25 at the scrapyard for it. So the store bought it. We used it as a display piece in the store for a number of years. And then we put it back on the wreck site. And we actually use it to tie off to. It weighs 500 pounds. So it's on the bottom where it belongs with the rest of the wreck. If you're 5'6" tall and you stand on the boiler, you're chest deep in the lake. So it's a really, really good shallow snorkeling wreck. It's a great wreck that we can take the 10-year-old kids to and show them an actual shipwreck from Lake Superior, as the engine is there, the boiler's there, the reversing gear's there, the rudder, the propeller are all there. The smokestack's down on the bottom, but the steam whistle, of course, is in some guy's garage. So we're trying to preserve as much as we possibly can of that wreck. The Howard is down at Victoria Island. It was built in 1864 in Wilmington, Delaware. Her sister ship was a gunboat during the Civil War. And it was one of the oldest tugs on the lake. On June 13th, 1921, she stranded on Victoria Island, caught fire, sank. There were no lives lost in this one. There's a steeple steam compound engine there that was a bit of a controversy between our two governments, because a place called the Smithsonian wanted to come and take it. And the Ontario government said, sorry, it's historic, you can't. And so it's been left there. It's a single cylinder, very, very early steam engine, and it was an early propeller. Flatland Harbor is the one that Michelle found, and she's playing with the controls, not me. Flatland Harbor is an area where a lot of the original stone for the breakwall was taken out in the 1890s by a guy named James Whalen, who was one of the early robber barons up here. And they took a lot of stone out of there. There are 11 vessels that we know of that are tied to the shore by steel cables, where they were brought down and left to rot. The top picture is, I think, an old propeller. We've got to investigate it more. It is wood over steel frame, which puts it in the late 1890s. There are tugboats down there. There's a dredge down there. There's lots of coal down there. There are square barges down there. I'm working with the owner of the property that's there from when it was a quarry up until the 1960s. Talking with him, he was born about 1958. He remembers as a kid these things being stuck out of the water. When people could come out and start snowmobiling, they would come out and they'd rip wood off and have fires, or they'd set them on fire. So a lot of the stuff is burned to the waterline. But as you can see from these photos, you can paddle out there and look down on these ships, which have huge timbers. There's some machinery sticking up, of course, bollards and other ship parts that were too big for the pirates to take off. So there's a number of things here, and it's just north of a site that they put a new boat launch in, which is one reason why we weren't diving it before, because it was a fair run from here. And Michelle's kayaked it several times. So you can launch your kayaks at the boat launch that has a picnic shelter, outhouses, easy entry, and you paddle about a mile north, and you're looking at these groups of wrecks. Okay, Michelle's asking about a thing we took off the other day, because I'm still a pirate. We found it's actually in the stock room. We found a prism plate, which has got prisms of glass set in the deck plate that was flush with the deck. And the prism plate would allow light to penetrate into the coal bunkers. It would also be used as a warning device for and this is the prism plate here, and it sat on the deck with the prisms coming down. Michelle, if you take your phone and shine the light through it. Okay. You can see how the light comes through the prism and would put light inside. If there was a fire inside, from below, the red would show through the prism plate so they would know if it caught fire. Coal bunkers, dust is highly flammable, and that's why a lot of the old wood steamers, you find out they were lost by fire, because you would have spontaneous combustion, or somebody comes in with something they shouldn't have down in the coal area, and they would get fires, or the smokestacks would overheat and they would catch fire. So that's some of the stuff that we have. That's going to go in the Alexander Henry Museum ship, so that we can show people something like that. Okay. For events here at the store, we do a pumpkin carve. We did one last week. We did a harbor cleanup on Sunday where we went below the docks at the Marina Park, and we brought up bicycles, scooters, batteries, half of a plywood boat, fences, bottles, the normal kind of stuff. We do an annual treasure hunt where we do fake Spanish coins made out of lead, and we put those on the bottom so people can find them. We do, of course, night dives. We're going to be going for whitefish in a couple of weeks, where we'll be dip netting them at night, which can be exciting. If you get too many fish in a net, they do like Finding Nemo. They swim down, and 3 big whitefish in a net can outswim you. We do a customer appreciation party in December, which we call the eggnog party. We go ice diving because we have it so much of the year. So we do a number of things like that. I'm a travel agent. I work with one of the travel agencies here in town. So we set up exotic trips. I mean, we do Cozumel, Mexico, Roatan, Honduras. We've done trips to Tobermory in the Georgian Bay, which of course is a good wreck site. I've done some exotic trips where we've gone to World War II sites and dove shipwrecks from World War II. Okay. Cozumel, Mexico, we do a turtle. This year, last 2 years we haven't, but we've done a trip down there where we've gone and helped save baby sea turtles by going on the beaches and working with the group down there to do turtle rescue. And we've been down for Day of the Dead, and I've got a number of friends there. Roatan, Honduras has beautiful reefs that are well protected, and their life is good. There's one shipwreck off the site that I go to. I happen to like wreck diving. Tobermory is a very popular wreck site for the Southern Ontario people in Georgian Bay, and it has very, very clear water. Again, with schooners and steamers that are mostly wood wrecks, and not the big fancy steel ones. Although at Isle Royal, we can go dive the Emperor, which was in the 40s, that it wrecked on Isle Royal, and that was a 530-foot steel steamer. Okay. Let me see. If you want to get to be a diver, there's a number of schools in Minneapolis that teach diving. We teach SSI programs, which is Scuba Schools International. I also have PADI instructors that work for us. So the 2 largest certification agencies are in the world we run their programs here. My son's got a 29-foot Alcan aluminum, which is set up for diving to take people out. We've got some smaller boats so we can go off the offshore sites to do wreck diving. Because up around the top end of the lake, we have the wreck of the Nebing is down at 100 foot in Nipigon Bay. The Mary McLaughlin is off of in Mountain Bay, and that's a 4-masted schooner sitting in 15 foot of water. And it at one time was the largest schooner on the lake. There's a whaleback barge that we can dive off of Pick Island. There's the Rappahannock, which was a 300 foot wooden coal vessel that sank in Jackfish Bay. So we have a number of wrecks. We have, of course, other things that we can dive. But for most of it's wreck diving. Okay, we have a Facebook group. We have Instagram. Michelle being my social media expert, wants to push all this stuff. I'm old, so I'm not so much into that as she is. We're doing summer charters when available. Both Michelle and I have our, you guys would call it a 6-backpack permit. We have in Canada, it's called an SVOP, which is a small vessel, captain's license. We can work then taking people in shallow water, get their skills up, and we can do, of course, all the specialty courses so that if somebody comes up and they're, say, from your group and they wanted to do a specialty course while they're up here, we could accommodate them with our PADI instructor or with SSI instructors to do those kinds of programs, such as people like to use dry suits for some reason in Lake Superior because they're warmer. Of course, the wreck diving is another one. So there's a lot of things we can do. And then, of course, Michelle likes to go hiking and climbing. And we have a whole group of people from here who do a lot of hikes, and we can get people to do all of that kind of stuff. For those of you who haven't been here, the highest falls in Minnesota are High Falls right on the border. We have Kakabeka, which they call the Niagara of the North. And there's a number of things to do in the region. It's not just diving. You can do almost all the things that you guys do as a group right out of Thunder Bay. Within 2 hours of Thunder Bay, you can do almost everything that you guys can do. Okay, so that's sort of the presentation we have. Some of the pictures I got was from Rusty Anchor Productions, which is Chris McAvoy, who happens to be a marine archaeologist, and he was involved when I brought up that artifact. And Chris Cole, who writes books for some of the shipwreck history, some of the other history I've got from archives that we have on site. So I guess now it would be thanking you guys for inviting us to even talk to you and go on. As I said, I'm just a diver, and I don't know what you call people who kayak all the time, but I'm an aquaholic. So we can turn it over to people if they want to ask questions, Barry.
Anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. Oh, I think we had one question in chat, but now I gotta go look for it.
Yeah, do you run charters to the Ganelda or the Judge Hart?
Okay, that would be the technical diving, and I haven't gotten into that part of it. The gentleman who was running the charters to both of them just retired and sold off his Zodiac, and he ran people there this year, but he's not planning to do it anymore. That was Paul Turpin with Discovery Charters. And Rossport is where they run out of, is about two and a bit from us. And there is a couple of people looking to get into it. And it being so far from our store base would be a little difficult for us to do, but we're going to see what happens. That'll be my best answer. As far as the Ganelda goes, I've got a display of some of it in the Henry right now. I actually have binoculars from the Ganelda, which are in a display here at the store. I have all of the videotape that was shot by Fred Burnell, who tried to salvage her in the 1970s. And I have all of the videos. The person I'm working with right now is the son of his last partner. And the boat that I'm getting the artifacts off from scrap would be the Annis Lee, which was his tugboat. I bought the artifacts off of Fred before he passed. His son Todd, I'm giving him some of the stuff from the Annis Lee for the family. So I've been involved with the Ganelda for years, but it's beyond the depth that I wanted to go to.
So did you get those binoculars from Ned Basher at the
No,
Rock
I got them from
Garden?
Fred himself.
Oh, okay.
And I have the grading in the in the Alexander Henry in a shipwreck room displayed on the wall. And the grading is what he brought up to establish that he'd found the wreck with the insurance and the salvers, because he bought the salvage rights off of Lloyd's of London. And I have a sheet signed by Fred stating that I brought the binoculars up, I brought the grading up in my provenance.
So are permits required to dive either of those?
No, you can dive both of those wrecks. The Ganelda itself, there's a debate between the Ontario government and people as to who actually owns it. In Ontario, we have the historic artifact law, which states that anything lost for more than 70 years belongs to the province. And so you can dive the wreck because you can't control the water. If you touch the Ganelda, you're trespassing because it supposedly is owned by Fred's son, Todd. If you take anything off the wrecks, you're stealing from the province of Ontario. But as far as diving them, taking pictures, no, that people do that all the time. Okay, the only wrecks that I know of that you're totally prohibited from doing anything with in Canada, right, in Ontario right now, would be the Hamilton Scourge, which are War of 1812 US ships that sank, and the Fitzgerald itself. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I've been on the Ganelda a number of times.
So you came up with, there's a number of guys who come up from the States. Some of the early ones we of course dealt with, and they've come up, and in the lake we have, of course, the Scotia Dock was just found a couple of years ago, and it's 800 foot underwater. So it's an ROV dive. So we have that. It's the same as Silver Islet. I get along with the people out at Silver Islet. We take people out to the old mine site, and we'll let you dive around the crib work and everything else, but we don't let people go down the mine shaft itself because it's privately owned. They don't want people in there, and it's really a rebreather dive. Because if you go in on open circuit scuba, you're diving on the shaft, there's wood bracing all the way around. And if you stop, all the sediments coming down around you. So it would be a rebreather dive, and you would need permission to do so from the Cross family that own that site.
So Wally, I don't know whether you can see the chat, but there's a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Let me look here.
Michelle will get it up for me. My technical support.
Oh yeah. What kind of wetsuit do you typically recommend for lake dives, such as Lake Superior?
A lot of the people here with suits are going in 7 mil, quarter inch for you guys. Sorry, I'll convert to imperial. quarter-inch wetsuits, normally one piece. Back zip suits are worn by a lot of people. Cold water hoods, boots, 5-finger gloves, can be worn summertime. A lot of us wear 3-finger. If you want to go deeper in Lake Superior, then you would go to a dry suit. And dry suits, of course, come from fabric dry suits, or what I call a bag, to 7 mil or quarter-inch neoprene dry suits. But summertime, quarter-inch 7 mil is quite adequate.
So are wetsuits provided in the diving school, or do you recommend folks bring their own?
It depends on your shape. Some people, if you can fit stock, we have 7 mil suits that fit most people that we carry in the store. Although some body types are custom, and they get to be a little hard to fit with a suit. Let's see what else we got, Michelle. I don't want to put my glasses on.
Do you see a lot of large fish down in the wrecks?
The trout you can see in the wreck, but a lot of fish don't like bubbles. So as soon as you come in and you start blowing bubbles, they're out of there. But having said that, on night dives, we run into fish quite a bit. So it depends. Bass and I'm going to have to say walleye and pike, they'll hang around as will the suckers. So it just depends on what we're doing. There was someone asked about the turtle releases. So somebody has done turtle releases before. A number of places do turtle programs to try and help the endangered sea turtles. Let's see what else.
How many dives do you have?
That's like asking me what my favorite dive site is. My favorite dive site is where I'm diving at the time that I'm diving. The place I really like diving would be the island of Yap in the far Pacific, and that's YAP. And that's in between Guam and Palau, or the Philippines. I've gotten to do some exotic diving. I dove the nuclear shipwrecks at Bikini Atoll a number of years ago. I went with a film crew and got the privilege of diving the USS Saratoga for an example of a shipwreck. Diving wise, I'm probably about 6,800 dives, or somewhere close to that now. As I said, I'm an aquaholic. I'll go on a trip to the Caribbean, and my poor long-suffering wife, in a week in Utila, I did 25 dives in 5 days. So I wasn't on shore a lot. Okay, so we'll try and cover some more. What else we got, Michelle?
Another question here. Are all boats called she, or just the wrecks?
It's strange that we do that, but we do always refer them to she for some reason.
It's some of the
Man's passion.
yeah,
for boats.
it seems to be what has always been around. Everyone seems to call their boat she, and even if the boat's like the Alexander Henry with a male name, it's still called she, her, and I can't tell you why. It's just what I was always brought up with is, you know, it's like the difference between a ship and a boat. You know, you have to try and explain to people when I'm doing tours on the Alexander Henry, it's a ship, but we have lifeboats on the ship, or we have work boats on the ship. And of course, I like to ask them, what's the difference between a boat and a ship? And a lot of people say size, and that has nothing to do with it, because a submarine is bigger than the Alexander Henry, but it's a boat. And the reason it's a boat is boats don't carry ships, but ships carry boats. So that's how that sort of comes about. It's kind of like, why do you have port and starboard? And port is the left side of the ship, because in the old days, that's where the ships always docked, was on the left side of the ship. Because before they had steering wheels and rudders, they had a board hanging over the side, which was a steering board, and that was hung over the right side of the Viking ships. So steerboard became starboard, which is the right side of a ship. So there's little things like that. And I can't tell you why we call her or she. Maybe it's because that's where we want to spend all our time. I don't know. But that's just one of the things. Okay. Do we have any more, Michelle?
There's another
Yeah, careful.
question here.
How
How
many
many wrecks are
wrecks
in
are in
Lake
Lake
Superior?
Lake Superior, nobody really knows how many wrecks are in there, because there are a number of ships that were built, or boats that were built that weren't even recorded. On the Henry site, we have a little cabin cruiser called the Ho-Hum, which was built 1902 by one of the local boat builders here, for the fishing that went on in the lake in the early 1900s with the Finlanders or the Finnish fishermen that were here. In 1932, she was converted to a cabin cruiser at the same yard, and it used to run from north of town from a place called Scriber Terrace Bay area, and it would bring supplies down from Scriber Terrace Bay to Mackenzie Beach, which is just outside of town. The supplies were taken out of the Ho-Hum, taken to a hotel where they went through a tunnel to a ship in the harbor, which would sail over to Isle Royal, where they would meet some other boats from the United States in the mid-30s. Rumor has it a guy named Capone was involved. She was a bootlegger. And a lot of those haven't been recorded. So you can go into a bay and swim in the bay, and you'll find the remains of a 30, 40-foot fish tug that somebody built, and it's on the bottom. And they may have little steam engines in them, or they could have small gas engines in them. So just about anywhere here you can find wrecks. Plus, you've got all of the freighters, steamers from the 1800s that were in the lake that were lost. There's 2 French minesweepers in the lake. Somewhere, rumor has it, off the Keweenaw Peninsula. They're the Inkerman and Carasoles. They were built here in Thunder Bay. They left here late 1918, just before the armistice was signed at World War I. There were 3 of them. Only one of them got to the Sioux, and there's a reward from the French government to find them, because they still have their French crews on them, and they're somewhere in the lake. So how many wrecks are there? Thousands is the easiest guess. Any others, Michelle? No. So if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank you guys for letting me talk to you. Unfortunately, I have lots of stories, and I could go on for pretty well ever. Tour on the Henry for some people is about 45 minutes. Mine are about an hour 15.
Can I ask something? It's really hard for me to type into chat. Anyways,
Okay.
could you hold up that prism deal again? Because I had you as a little person at the time.
Okay.
And did you bring that up to verify, or?
No, I brought it up because I'm a crook.
It's for a museum.
it's
for educational purposes.
Yeah, we're going to use it for
Yeah.
educational
So
purposes.
where's the glass?
If you
Oh,
can see
those
right here,
chunks. Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
those triangles are all glass.
Oh, I'm glad I asked for this. That's gorgeous.
Okay. On the whale backs, of which you've got the meteor. In the aft end of the whale backs, there are prisms actually set in the deck that are little round prisms that are set in to put light into the round hull of the ship. And so those are there. Of course, the Meteor in Superior is a very historic boat. It's the last one of her kind. They were designed and built in Superior for in the lake, and they're a pretty unique design. They were called whalebacks because they were rounded hulls and designed to slide through the lake. So if you get to Superior, you should just see that if you're into shipwrecks. And of course, you got the William Irwin, which is in Duluth, and you've got the Sundew, which is a U.S. Coast Guard cutter that's there.
Mhm.
Off the Keweenaw Peninsula, there is a U.S. Coast Guard cutter that was sunk by the Coast Guard after they were placing a buoy. There was a bit of an error in judgment. They didn't watch their position. They went up on the rocks. The bottom got tore out of it, and it was dropped off the Keweenaw Peninsula. That was the Mesquite was the name
And
of
that's
it.
just easier, right, than trying to figure out how to bring her back to shore.
Well, it's kind of unusual because when the Grandpa Woo wrecked on Isle Royal in storms, what year was that? About 85 or 90. It wrecked on Passage Island, which was our side. The Canadian government forced them to take out everything. Everything that was possible to be salvaged was brought up from that wreck. The engines, everything were brought up. So it just depends on, I guess, who owns it and how much clout they have, whether it goes down and
Right.
stays. And there are
Right.
sailboats that seem to get lost every year in the lake for some reason.
Sure.
There was one a few years ago where there was a mayday call. The guys went out there were people at Washington Harbor who went out to help them. And they had a gas powered pump that they put in the boat, and they were pumping the water out and the pump lost prime, and they'd get it running again and the pump lost prime, and they got it running again and the pump lost prime. And then they looked over and they got the pump running, and somebody watched the owner pull it out of the water. So it lost its prime, and that boat went down. So I don't know, is there still insurance activity that happens? And of course, those things aren't recorded. So there's stuff all over.
Are you familiar with the Mary Ellen Carter ship? There's a famous song about it. I don't know if it's just a song. They sing at the Winnipeg Folk Festival every year to close the Winnipeg Folk Festival. It's called the Mary Ellen Carter, and it's called the Mary Ellen Carter Rise Again. So I think they brought it back up.
It could be. They're still finding wrecks. I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they found a new wreck just off of one of the parks in Duluth. A small boat they just found down there. The Benjamin Noble was just found a few years ago. So there's a lot of things that we don't know. And Jerry Ellison and the guys from Minneapolis go around with a towfish and go looking for those things. And they've been very good at it. This past year, they just found a brand new wreck in Michipicoten Harbor. And it's about 110 foot max. The dishes are still stacked in the galley, so the pirates haven't gotten there. So there we go. I think we've gone through all the questions.
I have a question, Wally.
Sure.
I understand that in like 1905, there was a big storm that sank like, I don't know, 29 ships or something. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Not a whole lot. I'd have to try and remember what the ships were that went down. The Madeira was she the 1905 storm? Because a lot of the boats went down, were blown against the North Shore, and of course the shore from Duluth to the Canadian border has almost no protective barrier islands. So that when the wind howls and blows there, it brings, so the Madeira was 1905. The Madeira was blown against the shore right at Split Rock, and her tow went in ashore at Knife River. And there were a number of them that were blown ashore. Do you want to go up and get the Winchester? Okay, I'm gonna let Michelle talk for a minute. I'll show you an artifact that I got that was in the store when I came here. It was brought up in 1968, I believe, from a couple of divers. And Michelle can talk about kayak.
All right. I was like, you want to talk about ice climbing, kayaking? What are you guys interested in? I also do downhill skiing. We do, like he was saying, lots of waterfall hikes. I find like a lot of the history of the area really interesting. So yes, sometimes you'll find me exploring for old train tunnels. So if you're interested in any of those, I can expand. Or if you ever need the directions to that kayaking area that we were talking about, like Flatland Harbor, feel free to email us and I'm happy to give directions to it if you're coming our way.
Isn't there some good cross-country skiing? Are you in Thunder Bay? Is that where you are? Or?
Yeah, there's two different areas. I'm more of a downhill skier. I tried cross-country skiing for my first time and I looked like just a hot mess of a duck on land with my feet like so far apart. But they do have two really, I think it's like Lappy, and then there's one out by Mount McKay, and they're like so popular. There's like tons of people there every year. All right, here he is. Oh, he's gonna hand. This is his prices. What is this?
That is the watchman's gun from the Madeira.
The watchman's gun from the Madeira. Why do you have this?
This is a Model 94 Winchester. It was underwater for a long time.
Did you retrieve it?
No. It was sitting in the store, full of mud, not conserved. Number of divers went down in the late 60s, brought it up, came across the border with it, and it was hanging in the store. So I'm going by an oral history, not actual fact.
So
You mentioned Jerry Ellison earlier.
Yeah.
His partner, or one of the guys that goes around the lake shipwreck hunting with him, is Ken Merriman.
Yeah.
And Ken Merriman, as you probably know, has a program called Put It Back.
Well, I've been putting stuff back. I haven't decided what I'm doing with the Winchester because I got to bring it across the border. And I don't have definitive proof. I just have the fairy tale. That's where it came from. I've got 7 different guys who claim they brought the gun up. There's been other Winchesters that we brought out of the lake. So I am putting artifacts back, or I'm displaying them in museums, is what I'm doing.
So what is the rule about what you can take from sunken ships and what you can't take officially, legally?
Legally, you're not supposed to take anything.
Okay.
If the owner can be identified who owns the ship, it belongs to them. In the province of Ontario, if it's over 70 years old, it belongs to the province.
So it's different on the open seas, right?
Yeah,
out of the ocean, it's different, right?
Yeah. Of the shipwrecks that are down at Flatland Harbor, they're owned by the because they're attached to the shore, they're owned by the people who own the shoreline. And I've gotten permission from him to do like this prism plate and things like that to put into the Alexander Henry Museum. That's why I could bring it up. Otherwise, it would have been left on the bottom and then left. On the wreck of the Rappahannock a number of years ago, we put the ship's wheel back onto the wreck and chained it to the deck. And somebody went down and cut the chain and took the wheel again. So that's why I got into the Transportation Museum, so I can take these things and put them on display and they could be seen there. I prefer to leave everything on the wrecks because if we take all the stuff off the wrecks, there's nothing for me to take you to and show.
But if you don't take it, then if someone else takes it and they don't put it in a museum, then it's gone forever. So
yeah, that's happened on the Whaleback 115. I took a number of people there, and we swam through the stern turret, and I swam out, and they took all the dogs off the portholes. And 2 weeks later, the portholes were all gone. So it's how do you? I mean, we've got people up here taking ornaments, Halloween ornaments off people's front lawns. You know, so how do you keep people from taking off a shipwreck? The tugboat that I'm taking and getting stuff from, it's been on shore for about 10 years. The wheel's gone, the bell's gone, all the running lights are gone, the masthead lights are gone, the maker's plate is gone off the ship. And that's from people climbing on it on shore. So yeah, if you can, you put it back. And if you're not sure it will stay, then to me, you put it in a museum so people can see it. Because it's better to be in a site where people can tour, whether it's an interpretive center, by the if there was one by the Madeira. You know, the Duluth Marine Museum has a tremendous display of artifacts, and so you know, you've got your choice. Do you leave it or do you take it and put it on display? If you have to take a tool to take it off, I don't think it should be touched. You know, I've always felt that way, and but there's other people who will go down and they'll go on a shipwreck, and if they see it, they take it. I had one guy come up from the Gray Oak, and I said, nothing comes up. Nothing comes off this wreck. So he comes up from his dive and he hands up a lantern. And I go, what's that? Well, it's there. I said, put it back. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, put it back. He says, no, I'm not putting it back. I said, good. He said, help me up. I said, no, you're not coming on the boat. It's a 6-mile swim back to shore. Have a nice swim. Put it back. It went back.
Oh, wow, that's good.
You know, we had a guy on the Mary McLaughlin. There was an anchor hanging off of the cathead. And he said, I'm going to get it. I said, don't. He brought it up. Ministry of Culture and Rec went in and said, put it back. And he said, I'm not putting it back. They said, fine, we're seizing your boat, your car, all your dive gear. That's your choice. So it went back, not where it belongs, but it's at least on the wreck. So yeah, we try and preserve anything that should be left, should be left. And in this case, I've got permission from the owner so I could show people what they did in the old days. Otherwise, that would have been left, and of course, somebody else would have probably grabbed it and taken it.
Okay, any last questions before we finish the presentation?
Just one quick question. I was wondering what the function of that prism is. Is that just decorative, or is that a light or something? Or
It would put light into the coal bunker area, because back in a boat that didn't have power, you were of course using the little coal oil lamps, and you couldn't take one of those into a coal bunker without the chance of the coal dust igniting. And then you've got a major problem. So this would put light below deck. And if the coal bunker caught fire, if Michelle turns her light on again, you can see how the light would come through the deck. So they would know if there was a fire down below.
it's like there's sort of a modern thing you can buy at the hardware store, a light, I forget what they call it, a light tunnel or light something. Yeah, so it's like, sounds like it was invented a lot longer than we thought.
Yeah. So that's the interest on this artifact. So I'm going to be setting it up in the ship display, and I'll have a light going through it so that people can see how it actually worked to bring light into the dark areas of the ship.
I think the Japanese thought they invented it, but I don't think so.
Well, this is well, they could have invented it, but it was invented here at the same time.
Yeah.
Any other last questions? So thanks a lot, Wally and Michelle. I think that was really interesting. I think now we'll move into the social time. You can hang around if you want or leave if you want, whatever, but thanks a lot for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Very interesting.